Hi, my name's Lindy. Welcome to the channel. My website is www.lindycowling.co.uk. Email is info@lindycowling.co.uk. And the title of this video this mid-February evening UK time is the intersection of grids, that's consciousness grids, in relation to bloodline, blood family, soul line, soul family, multidimensionally as a multidimensional soul or vehicle or expression of consciousness, and ancestrally. So it's all kind of interlinked and interwoven. So this, again, I'm going to say it again, which I've said about the last 10 times on video. This wasn't the video I thought I'd be recording. It's very impromptu and comes about actually because around Christmas time, a couple of months ago, I felt very strongly drawn to start looking into the blood family tree. Now, this has not been an area I've been ever interested in before, but I felt really drawn and I kept putting it off and it kept nagging at me. So I thought, well, I've clearly got to do this. And now I can understand why, because it's come to such a lot of realizations, actually, some of which are still unfolding, as is the information still unfolding, and shifts in my perception and consciousness and awareness, because as you know on this channel I've been talking consistently for 5 years about soul family, blood family, healing particular trajectories. I'm not going to say past lives because I call that timelining now, and you know, let's say other realities, and I do feel from my perception and consciousness now that a lot of those realities are happening at the same moment now, and the multidimensional soul, but that kind of thing. And you'll know the kind of themes that I've been covering over the last 5 years on this YouTube channel. So this video has been prompted due to the kind of research I've been doing, but also the realizations that research has created in regards to other timelines and the intersection between ancestral family, soul family, blood family. You know, these crossovers in this consciousness grid, if you like. So what has been amazing to me before I start is just to say I may work in an unusual arena. I may work, I mean, I've got kind of used to it really, but in what some people might consider in the woo-woo side of an industry. But in many ways, I'm just a down-to-earth, ordinary Joe. And the point I'm making here, if I'm just a down-to-earth, ordinary Joe, and I've done this research and uncovered this, you find out, uncovered what I'm about to explain, you find out the interconnectedness of millions of us, and so many of us, and the truth behind, you know, us being connected, and that, you know, this somebody doing something here, there's like an equal effect for it somewhere else. And really it's mind-blowing because you see how you feel that your blood family is just a tiny little family, but how long it extends back, and the huge variation in life is extraordinary. So I'm going to explain that bit of it first before I get too woo-woo. So in the course of researching ancestry, and I'm not going to get too personal here because it's a personal thing, I'm still researching it, so I'm not going to go into personal details, but to keep it simple, we decided to just research direct generation grandparents. So I haven't gone down great aunts, great uncles, cousins, any of that, because I mean it could go on forever. I've just kept it direct grandparents all the way round. So I didn't know what to expect. I had the pull on the draw to do this and didn't know why. It kept nagging at me, so I thought clearly I need to do this, so let's do it. And it started off quite, let's say, there weren't any big shocks in there to start with. So it had already been spoken about in the family many years ago that we were direct descendants of like Roma, or what were used to be called, I think it's considered a disparaging term now, but gypsies, travelling families, travellers. So I never had the proof of it until now, but it had been vaguely spoken about in the family. So I find 2 grandparents direct travellers, and I go from 3 generations of like being born in a field, born in caravans, this kind of thing. You know, things like that coming up, which was great to validate Irish bloodlines, both sides of the family, Irish, American in there, and then swing from that to then finding out, which was the last thing I expected, that everywhere that I had lived in my life had direct links to grandparents and their families, and where they actually lived, born, died, spent their lives, and only just found this out. So I've moved quite a lot within my life, and everywhere I've gone is a direct link to where they were before, all the ancestors. Even more astonishing, whilst uncovering this and only following direct grandparents, you know, not going off on an obscure tangent so far, to find we're direct descendants from what was the French royal family, and Italian and Cyprus links, royal families there at the time when they were the royal families, but particularly the French, which is a direct line. So far 10 it sounds stupid saying it, 10 kings of France have been my grandparents, which sounds funny in itself. And I think there's a couple of saints in there as well, chucked in for the mix. And we're related to at least one, but we think 2 well-known celebrities over here that are also linked to royalty, happen to be relative of ours. And you know, links to Joan of Arc. Apparently our lot funded her war and fought with her and everything else. And there are even links to that, actually. That's a story in itself, because I've actually photographed and caught on camera I think she's called St. Catherine, but the one with direct links to Joan of Arc that she's supposed to have heard in her head, and that, you know, has connections to her and the action she took. I've actually got that on camera, that picture, not knowing that my direct descendants were friends of or supporters of hers, funded her. So the whole thing is quite extraordinary. There's Shroud of Turin's even in there at one point. And it sounds even crazy, that film, The Da Vinci Code, the Dan Brown thing, direct descendant of mine. Grandmother is actually named in the film, even though it was, you know, it's fiction, the film, but you know, it blurs the boundaries. Actually, not all of what has been uncovered there is fiction. So this is only so far, I've only been researching it 6 weeks, so it's been quite mind-blowing. And when I say mind-blowing, I don't mean that in an egotistical way. What is mind-blowing for me, I'm going to go back to what I just said earlier. I may work in an extraordinary realms, but I'm pretty much an ordinary Joe. What you see is what you get. And if an ordinary Joe like me can just do that kind of research and find this kind of thing out, it really shows you the interconnectedness of everything. If someone like myself can have generation upon generation of grandparents that are royalty, and then generations that are Roma or travelling, and then linked to Ireland and linked to the founders of America, it shows you that everything is interconnected. If you go back, and I haven't gone back further, I'm just trying to think. I think the furthest back I've gone in grandparents so far is about 25th generation, but these ones that I'm talking about were much, much closer than that. I'm off the top of my head, I think they were about 8th or 9th generation back. the royal ones, and the Roma and Irish about much closer. So the point I'm making here is it is amazing the interconnectedness of everything, and how that you have a perception that your blood family is your immediate family, the uncles or aunts that you knew, mother, father, immediate grandparents. But in fact, the bigger picture, the bigger grid here is absolutely massive. Not only is it massive, but what is really mind-blowing to me is some of the direct past life. I'm going to call it past life. I don't call past lives anymore, because my perception and consciousness has shifted on that. So I do believe there's a mixture of things going on, a mixture of ancestral memory, archetypal memory, actual memory of you being there, but actually it all existing in multiple movie screens at the same time. I don't tend to look at it in the same way now. But for an easy way of explaining it, another extraordinary thing, many of my documented past lives that I have on record, shall we say, turn out to be in the exact areas and places that I'm uncovering. So, for example, you know, the New England ones, Connecticut, Ireland. What's extraordinary to me is that there are direct ancestors that were in all of these places. So it shows me that some of what experiences people experience, that in consciousness that they feel is their past life, they may be experiencing an ancestor's records and recordings and memories on that. Some of it may be theirs, some of it may be archetypally. And what is also mind-blowing is I've got direct memories of being in particular places at particular times, let's say past lives, and there is the possibility, the very strong possibility, that I would have been either met or gone up against in direct opposition in my multidimensional soul in that reality to one of my actually blood ancestors. So what I mean by that, I'm going to make it simple. Say, for example, the American Civil War. I might have been on one side of that and my actual bloodline ancestor was on the other, for example. And we actually have got a relative that was in that war, one of them. Now, this is mind-blowing. And when I say mind-blowing, it's really funny, because when you challenge something, or you go out of the little box of your brain that's way outside that 90-degree view and goes into a 365-degree view, it kind of wobbles your brain. It kind of makes your brain go, ooh, as you try and perceive it and get your head round it. And I can see all these dots connecting up, of other timeline, past life recall, where I've actually lived in this life, thing after time. And there's even more that I'm not saying here that it's a little bit personal, and it's so mind-blowing really that I'm not going to say it, because I actually think it might, some people will really get that, not be challenged by it, but others will find it a bit much of a challenge, what I would say here, and I think it would trigger them. So there's no point in me saying it. But all I can say is the more I've found out and the more I'm going back, it's shocking. It's almost like the bloodlines have been on all sides of the fence, the most purest and the most, let's say, impurest. Some of which I've experienced their ancestral memories, some of which I have been there as a multidimensional soul. And there's so many things in the mix here. So it's an extraordinary thing. And what's come to my awareness is, which I'm going to talk about some more, but not in respect of this on this video, but for this video, is the connectedness of all of these things on the same network, or the same grid. So when I say network or grid, I can actually see clairvoyantly a grid or a network with lots of lines coming down and going across and intersections. And to me, it's like, as a multidimensional soul, it's almost like, well, I'm only saying it this way as an easy way of explaining it. It's almost like we put on a headset, like a virtual reality game. We put on a headset, and that headset has a particular grid. A grid that goes almost back and back and back and back, but there's an interconnectedness between lots of people on that grid. And I can even tell you, this is absolute God's honest truth, that there is an interconnectedness between, for example, the bloodline links that I've been researching, and there is actually a crossover to do with my ex-husband's family's ancestors, and they would have crossed paths and known of each other at some point here. So this is mind-blowing, because, as you know, this is an experiential channel, which means everything I talk about and share, I've either got direct experience of, I've worked with people with it over a 20-year period, all sorts of experiences. I've worked in past life regression, future life regression, been on Radio 1 with those kind of things years ago. Worked in hypnosis for nearly 20 years, and then worked as a medium, clairvoyant, psychic, 3 different kinds of healing, so it goes on, so it goes on. But everything I share on this channel is through working with people with these experiences. Part of what I'm doing is kind of a direct kind of channeling in a way that I'm doing here, and actual experiences of mine, so personal and professional. And I like to be able to back it up, not scientifically as such, because science is a long way behind what let's say the area of quantum physics, for example, is discovering. Science has got a long way to go to catch up yet. It's happening, but it's still slow. So I like to be able to quantify things, both for my own personal satisfaction, but I just like to be able to do that. And so for me, this is amazing, because, like I say, I have a long history of documented stuff, of where I had direct recall of being, and now I see that there are linear links to it over and over again. Now, of course, none of them were actually, that's not true in the senses of the whole grid and the whole intersecting cobwebs of things here, because I had no heads up whatsoever on the French royalty side of it. But it is interesting, and again, I'm not going to go into details here because it's not too personal, but all of what was happening there, and still actually happens throughout history of the royal family, is warring factions between one religion and another, you know, assassinations, burning them to death, etc., one religion to another. And this timeline, I'm nothing at all to do with religion. I come from that middle ground, if you like, let's call it, I like to call it kind of balanced, kind of spiritual perspective, really, but I'm not, you know, I don't affiliate with one particular religion. I just go with this middle ground, really. So for me, even that makes sense when I see what's happened in the name of it in my entire bloodline history, including having to flee from France for my grandfather's life, you know, and go stay with Elizabeth I, for example, for shelter, the Queen Elizabeth I of England, and so it goes on. So it's an amazing thing. So what I kind of see here as this is developing is an actual grid. And to me, the way I like to explain it, the way I see it really, is almost as if we as souls, as consciousness, we almost like put this, I'm going to call it a headset, it's an easy way of explaining it, like a headset on. It's got a grid on, and that grid, you know, it can go an infinite amount of possibilities, but it all kind of interlinks at some point, and there are crossovers at some point. And even if the crossovers are huge, like thousands upon thousands of people that you're connecting with in there, somewhere down the line, those crisscrossy grids are going to cross and intersect between blood family, you know, the ancestral soul family, you as a multidimensional soul experiencing particular things. And this to me is absolutely fascinating. It's fascinating because it's all so much bigger than we could really originally conceive. It's all so much bigger than we can really originally conceive or get our heads round. You'll struggle to get your head round it because your head will just do this wobbly thing. It's just like, that's like a cartoon thing, like someone slapped you up the side of the head. It kind of like, whoa, it really is kind of mind-blowing. Because it's like your perception goes from here and then it goes like that. Massive. The interconnectedness of all of it. And I don't know how many times I must have walked past churchyards where my descendants are buried. And, you know, I have only been to a few places in America, but the few places I've been, there's only one I've got to go to that I have Irish American descendants in. But the other places I've been, not knowing this, I've loads of direct descendants around New York, for example, when I was only in New York, not last year, but the year before. Actually, I was, you know, very drawn to be connecting with the earth and the land and doing energy kind of stuff. Well, I was there as a vacation, but I was doing that with a friend I was there with. And now I know why. But even more ironic is there is a big part of me in soul, in multidimensional soul, that is shamanic. Now, so far, but who can tell, because I'm uncovering so much stuff, watch this space, I haven't found a direct linear blood family shamanic link, but I found plenty of the Western man that lands in America, and who's to say I wasn't even up against the blood family, that is grandparents, against the shamanic side of it, and I'm a big shamanic part in soul. Who's to say that the point I'm making here is it seems that we're on all sides of the fence. And it's really, I knew this anyway, but it's really brought it home to me that we are on all sides of the fence. One way or another, archetypally, ancestrally, bloodline related, soul family, soul line related, us as multidimensional consciousness in all realities, in all timelines. We are intersecting constantly on these grids. These cosmic grids of consciousness where we are weaving in and out of it. They're like vast cobwebs weaving in and out of it. And there is a link to ancestors there. And like I say, I'm just an ordinary Joe, really. Like I say, I work in an extraordinary arena, but I'm just an ordinary Joe. It sounds like a line from a Julia Roberts and Hugh Grant movie, Notting Hill. Oh, she don't call herself an ordinary Joe, does she? An ordinary girl. I can't do impressions, but she stands there, doesn't she, in the shop in Notting Hill and goes, I'm just an ordinary girl looking for somebody to love me, or something like that. I've probably got the line completely wrong, which is why I don't do impressions. I'm a big movie buff. She says like something like that, she's just an ordinary girl. And what it's brought home to me is if I can do research like this and find out this extraordinary stuff, which is expand your consciousness just finding it out, especially when you work in the arenas that I've been working in, where I've seen it over and over again. I've recognised it, I've had direct recall, and I've probably been there. Some of it will be ancestral memory, meaning you're picking up on what your ancestors experienced in your consciousness and thinking it's your life experience. Some of it is big archetypes of consciousness out there. Some of it is the soul groups, the soul family side of it that you're experiencing as if it's yours. Some of it is your direct consciousness experience. But I think it's just a matter of time, a matter of days or weeks, until I am actually able to prove to myself that I've actually been in that particular consciousness or reality, interacting with a soul family or blood family ancestor at the same time. And we're actually seeing this in the family. There has been this process, and how many times have I done this on YouTube? It's like DNA, isn't it? This goes on all the way through the grid. Two completely different sides of the family are doing this. Of course, the more I'm finding out, the more I'm seeing it, which is what can I say? It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It really brings home for all of us because, like I say, I'm just an ordinary Joe. I'm sure if any of you really went down that route to find out stuff, you would find connection after connection after connection with countries that you'd never visited or you had visited, and in that particular place, with particular families, with particular people, connection after connection after connection, which means that you might be on this side of the grid, but over that side of the grid there is a direct correlation, and what's happening here is affecting what's happening there, and crisscross, crisscross, so it goes. It's an extraordinary thing, and I feel that these grids of consciousness, we all have these grids of consciousness, we all have this interconnectedness. And I also feel, on another note, which I may do a separate video about, is that when there is aspects of the same soul in more than one human vehicle, which people call twin flames, for example, when there are aspects of same soul in more than one human vehicle, I feel that they may be accessing. Now I say maybe, I want to be able to back this up. That's the way I love to work, experiential, but I like to be able to back it up. I feel, my gut feeling here is that they may be accessing and crossing over on the same grid, like they've both got the same headset on, and there is a direct correlation to this. Now, on a note here, and it's worth, I'm going to throw this in, I wasn't going to say it, but it's worth saying. The original, shall we say, twin flame that I interacted with way back in 2010 was half French. At that time meant nothing to me because I didn't know anything about my own extensive French royal nobility bloodline thing. I didn't even know it existed. I've always been drawn to particular places in France, but never been there, but not actually to royal places in France, but to more, let's say, more of the Mary Magdalene links. And that's another story in itself. I'm not going to go down that route. I think that's enough for one video, but I think it's fascinating. And the whole reason I brought this out is I think it's terribly exciting for everybody on an individual basis to know that you may think that you're Mr. Brown going to work 9 till 5, 7 days a week, and that's it. And you may think that you've got an aunt and uncle and perhaps your mother and father and a sister and brother, and that's it, a couple of relatives, and that's it. But I bet your bottom dollar, if you actually look back into your actual linear ancestry, you'll find some amazing, absolutely amazing stuff in there, which will prove to you that your interconnectedness to so many other things. So your world, again, goes from this to go like this, and your consciousness goes from this, to realise the interconnectedness of all of it. And the cause and effect from, it's one bit of the grid and this bit of the grid communicating with one another. And of course, the whole channel I've been talking about clearing bloodlines. My God, now I can see why it's been such hard work. Wow. I really see how much hard work it's been. Because you tend to think of your bloodline as just your very immediate family. But when you start tracking back through grandparents and then just see the amount of stuff on there, it's amazing, amazing stuff, but also, huge stuff in there as well. So it's very exciting. I'm sure I'll have more on this thing to do with grids of consciousness, because I feel like that's an area, I'm expanding into now. And I wanted to share this because to say that we're all so much more expanded than we realise, and there is this bigger picture. We've been saying it for so many years, oh, there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger picture, but to actually have that backup of there's so much of a bigger picture, really, that is quite amazing. And we all have that. And I bet your bottom dollar when enough people track all these things down, you'll find connection after connection. Even a friend of mine, and I have got to do more research on that bit yet, a friend of mine that I've known for quite a few years now, turns out there's a crossover between my bloodline and the family bloodline that she married into. And we always felt there was some kind of link in there, but didn't take much notice of it. And now I found it on a bloodline level, which, it's a mad, mad world, isn't it? On that note, I'll love you and leave you. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you go do some looking around at your own bloodline ancestry. Yes, it will give you a chunk of a puzzle. It won't give you all of it, because on a multidimensional level, as a multidimensional soul, you may have experienced many realities that aren't the same as what you're finding on a linear ancestral thing, but it's extraordinary how many crossovers there are, and it's an amazing process. I'll love you and leave you. Take care of yourselves. See you again soon, guys. Bye.